Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very, very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you all to today's webinar of social issues. We'll wait for a couple of minutes, let everyone join in after their class, and then we will begin in just a bit. Thank you so much for joining. Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Good evening, good evening. So I hope your class is over. It's not overlapping with the evening class. Good evening, good evening. Hello. Vanakkam, Sai Krishna. I am good, Hemlata. Thank you. Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. All right. I hope all of you are also taking part in the ongoing prelims test series. Doesn't matter if your attempt is 2024 or 2025, make sure that you do take part in the ongoing prelims test series as well. The first few tests have already been conducted, and I hope you wrote all those tests. Just in case you missed out on any test, please don't do that going forward. Give all the tests, listen to the explanation properly. It will help you in getting a much, much better understanding going forward. Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Also, one more thing very quickly. When you give these tests, I know if you do not get a good score in the test, it can be a bit discouraging. A lot of people, in fact, do not give the test in the test series thinking that if I get a bad score, I will lose my confidence. Please, please, please do not do that. Please make sure that whenever you give these tests, whatever score you are getting, it does not really matter right now. What matters is, are you putting yourself through that pressure situation? Because the more you practice, the better you will be in a position to eventually answer question the prelims exam. So make sure that you give all these tests. Even if you're scoring low, it does not really matter. Listen to the explanation, read the explanation properly, see what was lacking in your thinking, and then go forward. Also, there will also be certain questions in which you answered the question correctly but your logic was wrong, right? There will be many questions where you answered the question correctly, you got the right answer, but when you listen to the explanation, you were thinking in a very different manner. That also has to be corrected. Your luck was fine, your luck helped you in this prelims or in the practice test where you got some questions right even without thinking on the right lines. In the prelims exam, that might not be the case. So even if you get a question right, listen and read the explanation of that question as well. Don't just see the explanation of those that you got wrong. Even the ones that you got right, listen to that explanation. See if you were thinking on the right lines or not, if there's something that was missing. So, that is what my 2 cents are. On that note, I hope all of you are doing well. Let's see what do we have in store for you. So, as you know, today's webinar is mainly going to be focused on social issues. Social issues is a subject that is a part of GS2. Now, if you look at the GS2 syllabus for the mains examination, that is, the GS2 syllabus consists of polity and governance, then IR, that is international relations, and then it has something called social issues. So social issues specifically was actually or is a part of the GS2 in the mains examination. Now, what are the different types of topics that you get in social issues? The topics that we usually get are issues that concern the vulnerable section of the society. So, for example, there is a news about discrimination on the basis of caste, discrimination against scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. Let's say there is a news about a government scheme for empowerment of women. Let's say there is a government scheme about the empowerment of the disabled community. All these are what you read in social issues. So social issues in itself is a very broad subject. Usually Every single year, if you look at the GS2 paper, every single year, usually on an average, we get about three questions from social issues. It may be two on some years, it may be four in some years, but on an average, I would say 3 to 4 questions every single year you will get on social issues. A lot of these things and social issues that we study can also be used in your essay writing, because a lot of essays that you write, you have to give real life examples, you have to give examples of what the government is doing, what are the new initiatives in the society. In essays also, reading social issues topics becomes extremely important, because that data becomes very very valuable for you. As such, it is not very important for the prelims exam, although there may be some questions here and there for prelims as well. But overall, if I have to talk about the importance of this subject, it is much much more important for the mains exam rather than for the prelims exam. But in prelims also, there may be some questions here and there that may be asked. Having said that, these are the topics that we'll be discussing today from social issues. First, we'll be discussing about the Lancet report on child marriage in India. There is a report that has come out about the prevalence of child marriage in India, the issues related to it, what is the government trying to stop that, what is the issue in not just India but around the world as well. Second topic that we'll be discussing is about the Shresht scheme. This is a scheme under which the government of India is trying to give a push to scheduled caste students, helping them get into better schools, helping them with state of the art education so that they can get better job opportunities. Third topic is caste based discrimination in Indian prisons. Recently, there was a PIL filed in the Supreme Court where the petitioner said that even inside the prisons in India, prisoners are discriminated on the basis of caste. If you look at how the work is assigned amongst the prisoners belonging to the upper caste are given the work to prepare food. The prisoners belonging to the so-called lower caste are given the work of sanitation, etc. So that's a discrimination where Supreme Court gave very strict warning to the states. Then there is a topic of social justice and empowerment ministry releasing their year end review. So basically, every single year when the year comes to an end, every ministry of the government releases their year end review. Basically, every ministry gives a report card of itself telling what were their highlights in the last 1 year, what were the achievements in the last 1 year, what were the new programs. So we'll be discussing the highlights of this ministry. Then housing for particularly vulnerable tribal groups. The PVTG here stands for particularly vulnerable tribal groups. There are 75 of them. The government is focusing on providing housing for them as well. So we'll be discussing how that is going forward. Then Suvidha sanitary napkins. Now government again has been selling this under the Pradhan Mantri Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana. We'll be discussing the status of that. And in the end, NCRB, that is the National Crime Record Bureau, has given the Crime in India 2022 report. These are the topics from social issues that we'll be discussing. Someone asked me in the chat, is social issues, social justice the same? Yes. Social issues, social justice is the same subject. There is no difference. Social justice is not a different subject. Social issues, social justice is the same subject altogether. It's not different. Let's start with the first topic. So the first topic is, a few days back, Lancet is a very famous journal, a science journal that has a lot of papers published, a lot of very famous researchers, scientists published their paper in Lancet. Lancet carried a report a few days back talking about the prevalence of child marriage in India. Now, let's try and understand this. In India, we do have a law against child marriage. What is the minimum age of marriage in India? The minimum age of marriage in India for males is 21, and for females it is 18. Now you might say for females also it is 21, but no. For females also the government introduced a bill to increase it to 21, but the bill has not been passed so far. So at present this is a minimum age of marriage. But even then, the reality is, if you look at many parts of the country, especially rural areas, you will see a lot of child marriage being prevalent. How much? Almost one in every five girls, especially, are married below the age of 18. Now, why is that a case? Why do the families send off their girls, or why do the families marry their girls at such a young age, and what is the problem with it? Look at it from the point of view of the parents of a girl child. The parents of the girl child know that eventually they will have to marry off the girl. In most of these cases, the girls that are being married at a young age are those that are not highly educated, so they are not working, they are not earning members as such. So for a family, for the parents of the girl child, their logic behind marrying off the girl at a younger age is to save on the expense, because for them the practical thinking is that every single day that she lives with us there is an expense. She will eat, she will stay here, there's an expense. Why do we bear that expense if eventually we have to marry her off? So why not marry her off right now rather than marrying her off at a later stage? That is first thinking. The second thinking is when it comes to the issue of dowry. Now, dowry again is something that is prohibited under law in India. But as you know, in India, a lot of things that are prohibited under law are still prevalent, and dowry is also one of them. Now, the dowry also comes into the picture. The parents believe that the later the girl gets married, the more dowry they will have to pay. So rather than coming to a situation where they can't afford the dowry, why not marry off the girl at a much younger age? Now, these are usually the issues because of which we see a lot of child marriage being prevalent in India. This is what the report has said, that despite all the laws, despite a good level of education, the country, even today, 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 6 boys are married. Now, you don't have to go very far away in your own house, and again I'm not 100% sure, but I can guarantee in your own house, ask your grandparents at what age did they get married. Just ask each of them, your grandparents from the father's side and from the mother's side. Ask each of them how old were they when they got married, and it is a very, very probable case that they may not be 18. In case of the grandmom, or your grandfather may not be 21. It is so, and it used to be even more prevalent earlier. It has actually stopped being that prevalent now, but even then 1 in 5 is a very, very huge number. Now, there is no doubt over the fact that with rising education, the trend has decreased. For example, in 1993 girl child marriage was 49%. So in 1993, almost half of all the girls in India were getting married at a age that is below the law. Now that has decreased to 22%, but even then it is extremely, extremely high. Which are the states where these issues are seen mostly? States such as Manipur, Punjab, Tripura, West Bengal, Chhattisgarh. These are the states where we have seen a surge in child marriage. Now, these are also the states, if you actually look at them carefully, these are also the states where the literacy level may not be very high. These are also the states where you will see a lot of people in the rural areas, especially amongst the women, do not work. It is very, very rare, rare that you will see a girl child being married at a younger age from an influential family. It usually happens in those families where the girl child is seen more as a financial burden. And this is where the problem starts. You can blame the parents for that in some cases, but if you think practically from the parents' point of view, when they have a large family to feed, they are not really throwing their girl out of the house. Their logic is, why not get the girl to our house at a suitable age so that it helps our purpose as well. Now, with the COVID-19 crisis, this has become even worse, because with the COVID-19 crisis, a lot of people lost their jobs, especially in the rural areas. Their financial condition became even worse, and that pushed the people more towards the issue of the girl marriage. As I said, it's mostly about transferring the economic burden and also to avoid increased dowry at the later age. It is believed that the earlier you get the child married, the better it would be. Also, in a lot of rural areas, the tradition is, let's assume that there is a 10-year-old girl that is married to, let's say, a 14-year-old boy. In a lot of families, what happens is the girl, even after getting married, does not go to the house of the boy. She will only move to the house of the boy later on, much later on. It does happen in many of the rural households that what they do is They just have a kind of an agreement that we are married, we don't have to now look for another bride or groom. The girl will come to the groom's house later on, but now we are just fixing this arrangement. This also happens in a lot of different traditions. In different languages, you give different names to this kind of a tradition, but it also exists in rural areas specifically. Now, what are the factors that lead to all these issues? First, the traditional practices in India, especially in rural areas where two-thirds of India still lives, a lot of traditions are still followed, and this is an integral part of our tradition. As I said, ask your grandparents if they were married at a legal age, great. Ask them at what age their parents were married, and you will find out that someone in your lineage was married underage. That is an issue that we have seen in almost every family. There is an issue of gender inequality. As I said, women are seen or girls are seen more as an economic burden as compared to boys. And this is all connected to the issue of girl infanticide. This is also connected to the issue of people wanting to have a boy because of the presumption that a boy or a male would be an earning member rather than being an economic burden. Although it does not hold out to be true, especially today, it does not turn out to be true. But even then, that aspiration of having a male child, because the assumption that the male child would help in being the earning member, that also helps this narrative where the girl child is considered more of an economic liability. Now in India, as I said, we do have a law. This is called Prohibition of Child Marriage Act of 2006. This is the latest law of this kind. We have always had certain law for minimum age of marriage in the time of the British, even before they arrived here. But the latest law that is in force is the 2006 law, which sets legal age for boys as 21 and 18 for women in case of marriage. There is also an officer appointed to look into all these cases of child marriage. That officer is called the Child Marriage Prohibition Officer. So, child marriage prohibition officers are the ones that can get the complaints registered in case of child marriage. They will also help in filing the case if a child marriage was done. They will be the one who will be collecting all the evidences to make sure that the case is fought in the court. What are the other things the government is doing apart from making the law? See, there are two ways in which you fight a problem. It is called carrot and stick policy. I'm sure all of you would have heard this phrase, carrot and stick. Carrot and stick means you give incentive. Carrot means giving incentive. Stick means giving punishment. So, carrot and stick policy means you give incentive to those who are following the law and you give punishment to those who are not following the law. Both of these have to work simultaneously. So, on one hand, the government is giving punishment to those who indulge in child marriage, but the government is also trying to incentivize those people who are adhering to the law. For example, there's a scheme called the Dhan Lakshmi scheme, under which the government does a cash transfer for the girl child for their insurance coverage to eliminate girl child marriage. There are also schemes such as the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao Yojana. There are also many state governments running similar initiatives. For example, states such as West Bengal, such as Odisha, they run their own versions. All of them running their versions in the hope that the girls are sent to the schools and complete their education so that the girls themselves are empowered to take decisions for them rather than being forced upon certain decisions by their family members. In going forward, what is it that government or the civil society can do to fight against this problem? First, economic empowerment initiative. See, again, the reality is only those girls or women who are not economically or financially stable, those who are dependent financially on their family members, only those girls are the ones who are forced into child marriage. When you ensure a proper education for the girl and proper economic empowerment of the family, the cases of child marriage will reduce drastically. There is a direct connection between families where child marriage occurs and families that are poor. It is only amongst the poorest families that these kind of issues are seen. So having economic empowerment of the family and the girl has to be the first step forward. Second, engage the community, encourage them, teach them. In the rural areas, for example, a lot of activities are done, like the Nukkar Natak. There are many NGOs also. There are a lot of social workers that go and try to talk to the people, try to talk to the girls. There are also awareness programs run through panchayats, through Anganwadis also. A lot of awareness programs are run so that the parents are made aware that when you get a girl married at a very young age, when you force a girl to enter into physical relationship at a very young age, when her body is not ready for it, it has a disastrous consequence, not just for the girl, but also if she becomes a mother at a very young age, it has a negative impact on the child as well. So educating the family and the girl herself will have a positive impact going forward. Then it also has to focus on mentorship and peer education, means educating the girls, educating the entire environment. For example, the girls who are going to school, making sure that in their school they are taught about these values so that they can actually argue and convince their parents also to do the right thing. Child marriage is not just an India based phenomena, although it's a phenomena that is usually seen only in the poor developing countries. Apart from India, also it is seen in many other parts of the world, especially in Africa, in other some other countries of Asia. That is why globally also it's recognized as a problem. UNICEF categorizes child marriage as a human right violation. Even in the Sustainable Development Goal, the SDG 5.3 says that child marriage elimination is extremely important to be achieved by 2030. The UN itself says that 1 in 5 young women worldwide were married in their own childhood in 2022. So India is almost at the same global average. But again, this is not an issue that is seen in the developed world. It's an issue specifically seen exclusively in the developing world, only such as India. This is a kind of a connected question, and I would urge you all read a bit about the National Child Policy. This was a question that the UPSC asked in 2016. Read about the National Child Policy, read about what are the provisions it had, read about what does it say about child marriage, about the empowerment of girls, etc. Before we go ahead with the second topic, let me take up a few questions that have been asked quickly. Saurabh, what was the logic behind female marriage age being less than that of men? Saurabh, it's not a logic that I'm convinced with, but around the world, usually it is the same logic. A lot of countries usually believe that for a good marriage, there has to be a certain gap between male and female, with female being the younger one. There's no scientific logic to it at all. It's not a logic that I also agree with, but it's a trend that we see in other parts of the world as well, where the age for getting married is usually slightly lesser for female as compared to males. Then Sabha is saying whenever it comes to girl child marriage, conclusion is women empowerment. Why don't we educate, empower boys and men not to marry uneducated and younger girls? Sabha, because at this age, 15-year-old boy is not getting married because he wants to. It's all pressure from the parents only. So don't think the 15-year-old boy is saying, I want to marry a 12-year-old girl. So even if you go and educate the boy, I'm not really sure if it would have an impact. So it has to be at the end of the day with family being educated more than anything else. Uh, Yashwant is saying, are these webinars sufficient or do we need to listen to CNN? Yashwant, how can I choose between the two? I appear in both. So, see, again, you you have to decide where you are getting the best value from. A lot of things in the webinar, most of the things in the webinar that you see will be covered in the Current Affair magazine also, will be covered in the CNA as well. So I don't know how to choose between the two. Maybe close your eyes, choose one of the two between. You will always see some repetition. I won't say there will be no repetition. At the end of the day, it is news only. It will be repeated somewhere or the else. Then, okay, lot of questions coming in. Anmol Deep is saying, does joint or nuclear family impact it or not? Anmol Deep, no specific report has said this, so I won't give my personal opinion, but no report has said that joint or nuclear family impacts girl child marriage, etc. or not. Then, Sandy is saying, I think girl marriage happened due to lack of education between these communities. If we don't provide proper education to these people, it becomes even worse. What's your opinion? Sandy, I 100% agree with what you're saying. I don't have any contrasting opinion, but it's more idealistic thinking. I'll tell you something. Whatever solutions we talk about, it is very idealistic in nature. I'll tell you a very simple example. See, you say that getting more education to people will make sure that they are not marrying off girls at a young age. Fine. You are educated. I am educated. Both of us studied in the school. Honesty is the best policy. We studied in the school to be good, to respect everyone. Do you do that 100% of the times or not? Just ask yourself this. So, yes, on paper, it's a very good, honest thought. Give everyone education, make sure they are educated. But in reality, you also know lessons taught in the school are not really always implemented on the ground, right? Okay. Then Ritu is saying, is there any kind of tracking done to see whether money provided is being used? Yes, Ritu. Whenever the government spends even one single amount of money, they track every single thing. So don't worry, government is not throwing away money. Polke Singh, every year on certain days like Akhati, lot of child marriages happen despite government bureaucracy aware about it. How can this be tackled? Pulkit, they are trying to tackle this by appointing these officers. If you know of a specific case, you know your police station, go and appeal. Be a responsible citizen, okay? Then, Rashida is saying, please argue to the government to change the law. Why always girls have to go to the boy home? Rashida, I'm not sure how to answer this question. UPSC will not ask you should the guy come to the girl's home or not. See, as a guy, I'll be very happy to live at my wife's house because I get treated very well there. So I don't have a problem with that. So you can ask others, but I don't have a problem with that. I can live at that house also. I get treated even more, even better, even more royally. So I'm happy with that. On board. You have my support. Then, okay. Guys, if you ask a lot of questions again, it will be difficult to move ahead. But anyways, Ilma is saying, can we take any action for historical mistakes of marriage, like someone had married at a young age and now want to take action against that? Ilma, again, you can go to the police if that is a case, and you will be given whatever solution that are provided. Dhwani Singh, I see many girls who are studying, but their parents say, ज़्यादा पढ़ेगी तो हमारी भी नहीं सुनेगी. And then they marry them off to much older guys. Then they suffer domestic violence. Is there any solution to that kind of problem? Guys, I wish this was that kind of a session where I was giving solution to your personal problems. But unfortunately, this is not that kind of a webinar, that kind of a session. So I don't know, man. Police, go to the police. Go to the police. That is what I can tell you. If the police doesn't listen to you, make a reel out of it. People watch that on Instagram now. So I'm sorry, but not that kind of a session where I'll give you your solution to your life problems. That will be a different webinar. You can attend that by giving a separate fees. Okay, then Vikram is saying how to approach this question. Vikram, it's a straightforward question. What are the points in the national child policy? How to approach this question? By reading the national child policy and answering this. This is the only way you can approach the question, right? So I don't think any other approach is required. Okay. Okay, I'll take one last question. Sri Lakshmi is saying why only North India has higher rate of child marriage compared to South India. Sri Lakshmi, the direct connection is the literacy level, as we have seen. The higher the literacy level, usually we have seen much lesser rates of child marriage. So high literacy level, as seen in the states of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, usually mean that there is a lesser child marriage, and also societies such as Kerala, for example, are much more matrilineal, where women play a much stronger role. That's why perhaps the practice is not that prevalent in South India. On that note, let's begin and let's start with the second one. Guys, I know you have a lot of personal issues. I about marriage, maybe yourself, or you're asking for a friend of yours. You ask for a friend of yours, but again, not a place where I can answer your personal questions about your marriage or your friend's marriage. So maybe some other place. Anyway, The next topic that we have taken up is about a scheme run by the government of India called the Shresht scheme. Now, the simple idea about the Shresht scheme is the government of India wants to ensure that the students belonging to the scheduled caste community, they also get high quality, high class education. So what the government is doing, government is handpicking students after an entrance test from the scheduled caste community, giving them access to good residential schools. Many of them obviously can't afford them. So what will happen? The government will give the fees, whatever fees that has to be given, the government will support them. This is called the Shresht scheme. The full form is Scheme for Residential Education for Students in High Schools in Targeted Areas. So this is specifically for CBSE and state board schools. The government of India will take an entrance test. It does take an entrance test. Those meritorious students who deserve a chance, they will be sent to very well-known private schools or the schools run by NGOs, and all the expenses will be paid by the government. The admission under this scheme happens in classes ninth and 11th, so that they get at least a couple of years before they face the board examination. This is specifically for those members of the scheduled caste community where the annual income of the family is less than 2.5 lakh rupees. So those family members who are earning less than 2.5, those families that are earning less than 2.5 lakh rupees, they are the ones who will be eligible under this scheme. Now, this covers two types of people, or this operates in two ways. First way in which this operates is private schools. So government will choose well-known private schools where admissions will be given. That is mode one. And mode two is schools run by NGOs or trusts. So schools that are run by trust or NGOs, they also are a part of this particular scheme. Under this, the government will take national entrance test for Shresht. This test will be conducted by the National Testing Agency. Selected students will be given admission to the best CBSE schools or the state board schools in the private sector in classes 9th and 11th. Again, these are residential schools. So obviously for residential school, the fees is much higher. Residential school means hostels, you will be living in the school premises itself. The expense is much higher, not everyone can afford it. The government will provide that expense. It can be anything between 1 lakh and 1 lakh 35,000 for every year. The government will also help them with bridge courses. Now, what is bridge course? Basically, the concept of bridge course is, let's assume I took an admission in a very good school in class 10th, but I am not at that level, because students who are already studying in that school for a long time, their level when they reach class 10th is very high. I studied in some other school and I entered the school in class 10th, so my level is not at par with the other students. So I require something called a bridge course. Bridge course means additional, you can call it tuition, you can call it coaching classes, whatever you want to call it. We call it bridge courses. So bridge course will be specific courses outside the school. They will also be provided to the student so that they are at par with the other students in that classroom, rather than actually lagging behind because of their background. This is something again that the government will help them with the bridging school. The government will monitor the progress. The government has put the responsibility on the schools. The schools will have to give a record of the academic performance of these students. Are they progressing or not? Their learning levels, the government has to see whether their money is being spent in the right manner or not. First part, as I said, was for the private schools. Second part is about NGOs operated school. VO means voluntary organization. These are NGOs only. When you say VO, that means voluntary organizations. So schools run by NGOs, voluntary organizations also, they will also be a part of this. Their fees is lower. There also government will help the student with the fees from 27,000 to 55,000 rupees per student, depending upon what is the school fee. Again, this scheme is specifically targeted to ensure that when the students enter higher education, when the students enter colleges, or when they give the college entrance exam, they are at par with the other students. So that, see, you also know a lot of people who do not support the reservation laws. Their argument always is that why is it that some categories are getting reservation in colleges, higher education? They are not even at par with the others. So government is trying to bridge that gap. When you say why is it that the scheduled caste student is getting a lot of priority or a lot of reservation in higher education institution, let's say the IITs, the government is trying to bridge that gap to make sure that these students don't just enter great colleges on the back of reservation, etc. They get great quality education in the schools itself. That is what the government's objective is. The institutions which are participating, they'll have to tell the government about the performance of these students online on the websites as well. The schools will function in a very proficient and in a very efficient manner. They will have to install CCTV cameras to give live feed for the parents of the students as well. They can watch the classrooms. As you know, a lot of very high level school these days do provide live CCTV camera coverage access to the parents to watch over their kids as well. All these institutions can also be inspected by the inspection team as well going forward. So far, this scheme has already given admission to about 2,564 students in 142 private residential schools. So the government has spent crores and crores of rupees already, and the government is planning to continue this scheme even further to cover as many students under the scheme as possible. On that note, let's see if you can answer this question before I take up your questions. Read the question carefully. 'Let me give you your options. Your time has started. 29% people only got this right. The answer here is A. Only one of these three is correct. How? Let's see. First question, admission provided in class 10th and 12th? No. Class 9th and 11th. We just discussed this. The admissions will be given in class 9th and 11th and not in 10th and 12th. Second is also wrong. Why? It is only for scheduled caste, not for scheduled tribe community. The scheme is specifically focused on the students coming from the scheduled caste community and not from the scheduled tribe community. And the third is correct. As we discussed, the selection of the students will be done through the entrance test conducted by the National Testing Agency. They will conduct the test, select the students eligible for the program, and they will be given the admission. And that is how the correct answer here is A. Only one of these three is correct, the other two here are wrong. All right, then let's take up some of your questions. Um, okay. Vechri saying it's a good initiative by the government. I don't want to criticize such a good step, but I'm criticizing it. But in reality, we see that SC/ST are discriminated at the hands of the teachers, fellow mates. So is the government planning anything on this issue? Government work should not end at enrollment. Vechri, see, there are already laws which are against discrimination. There are already laws prevention of atrocities against SC/ST. So again, the problem in India has never been lack of laws. The problem has always been the lack of implementation. So we already have a law that talks about you cannot discriminate on the basis of caste. It is against your fundamental rights itself. So I'm not sure why do you think there's not a law about it. It's in the fundamental right. There's Prevention of Atrocities Act as well. So don't worry. It is a law that is present. You see, the reality is not let's not just talk about teachers. The problem is you cannot go around the world, around the entire country, and keeping an eye on each and everyone. At the end of the day, if someone has a value system under which they discriminate people on the base of their caste, it's difficult to change their mind. The reason is, if, and I'll give you a very simple example, and you can try this as well. Talk to a 50, 55-year-old person. Okay, now listen to this very carefully. Let's talk about your parents, your father or your mother, whoever is more politically inclined. Let's say your father or your mother support a certain party. Let's say they support BJP or they support the Congress or whichever place you are living in, they support a certain party. Try and see if you can convince them against that party. Just as an experiment, try and do that. Try and see if you can give them points to convince them that what you're thinking is wrong. And you will realize how difficult it is. And the reason why I'm saying this is, the reality is, the older that you grow, the more the more belief you have in your own mind that whatever you think is absolutely correct, and it becomes increasingly difficult to convince you otherwise. So it's not just about the teachers who are discriminating, it's also bad. But the problem is, you have to address these problems at a very early stage. The later that you address the problem, the later you try to change the mind of a certain person, it becomes very, very difficult. So we do have laws about it, but again, having a check, keeping a check on each and every individual is very, very difficult, practically speaking. Induja has a question. Why they help them to join private school instead of government can increase the standard and quality much better. Even students studying in higher education can't afford. Induja, why can't both be done? So they are doing both. Let's not say do this and not that. They are trying to increase the level of the government schools as well. But see, the reality is, you also know this. Overnight, you can't expect the government school to be as good as the private school. You also know this. So let's not be very idealistic in saying, oh, focus on government schools, they are the best. You also know that it will take many years to bring them at par with private schools. That is the issue. Simple. Then, Deepika is saying, what will happen if students don't perform well? Deepika, they will fail. What else? I don't know what else are you expecting to happen. Uh, 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 Rambat is saying, providing live access of child to parents, isn't it compromising the right of the child? Rambat, see, it's not compromising the right of the child, because the issue is, it's not that the cameras are being put in the washrooms, right? The cameras are being put in the classrooms, in the public places. And also, when the parent is sending the child to the school, it is the prerogative of the school to keep the child safe. And it requires, if it requires sending or sharing their live location with the parents, it's as good as that. It's like saying, if I have a kid, it's like you are asking me, why are you keeping an eye on your kid? It's an invasion of his privacy. It may be invasion of his privacy, but I have to keep an eye on the kid, right? So, yes, there has to be balance. Anyways, Ananya is saying, particularly choosing from SC community can create more discrimination since many students from general can get education due to lack of funds. Aren't students getting deprived of higher education? See, the problem is how we think about a certain scheme. For example, we read about the Shresh scheme. It's about student for SC community. The first thing that comes to our mind is, why only SC community? Why not others? Papa, there are already provisions for others. So it's not that if the government has a scheme for SC students, others are not even going to anywhere. They have their own schools, they have their own Navodaya Vidyalayas, etc. So whenever you read about the government taking affirmative action for a certain group of people, let's not think as a reaction, why not for everyone? Because if you take this action for everyone, then it becomes action for no one. Are you understanding that? There are provisions for others already. It's not that the government is saying that others can't go to school. So you have to understand this from the government's point of view as well. Then, okay, I'll take the last one. Sham is saying, on one side, government is saying we can eradicate caste discrimination by providing some opportunities to some caste, but they are giving benefit in the name of the caste. This is not discrimination. No, Sham, this is not discrimination. See, you have to understand the idea. Discrimination is different than affirmative action. Affirmative action means it is a responsibility of the government to provide certain incentives to those community which are discriminated against in the past or which have been lagging behind in the past. So you cannot say that no, the government is discriminating on the basis of caste. Again, please understand, if you read that the government has started a scheme for scheduled caste, your first thought should not be why is there not a scheme for everyone. There are schemes for others as well. So please don't think that the government is asking only them to study, others to go out of the school. No, there are schools for others that already exist. So there is not a problem with that. If you don't belong to scheduled caste, can't you go in a school? You can. So don't act like, oh, now only scheduled caste will study, we are going out of school. No, you can still study, you can still go for scholarship, you can still go to other schools that you like. So don't think if a government is working in the interest of someone that everyone else should get the same treatment. Everyone is getting treatment that they deserve, that they require. Okay, on that note, guys, you make me speak a lot of stuff. Okay, then third topic. The third topic that we have today is again on the basis of caste. Whenever we study this caste based topic in polity, governance, it brings out a lot of reactions from everyone. It's absolutely fine. People have a very strong opinion about caste based reservation or politics or policies. There is no one who is neutral about it. Some people support it very rigorously, some people oppose it very rigorously. Absolutely fine. The only thing that I suggest to you is, while appearing for the UPSC exam, having an opinion on these things, whenever you write something, make sure you write from a neutral point of view. Don't write from the point of view of where you stand. I'm not sure if I'm able to basically get the point across. If you are a political science student or if you have read PSIR, you would have read something called the Rawls theory of justice. Have you read Rawls theory of justice? Have you heard of this? Rawls theory of justice. Not heard of this. Okay. If you're not heard of this, then forget about it. Let's move forward. Let's move forward. Okay. So, okay, I'll tell you in simple terms what exactly is this. I'll tell you in very simple terms. Now listen to this. The Rawls theory of justice, what does it say? So basically, John Rawls, very famous political scientist, he said that when anyone makes a law or when anyone makes a certain policy, even if the person is the best possible person, if the person is extremely neutral, even then, unknowingly, the person will make a policy that favors him. For example, if I am a person who lives in an urban area, if I am a male, when I make a policy, unknowingly, I will always make a policy that benefits males who live in urban areas because I belong to that category. This is what he said, that knowingly or unknowingly, you will always make a policy which benefits you. So, the only way to make a good law is when you don't know anything about yourself. He called it the wheel of ignorance. He said that you can only make a good law when you don't know anything about yourself. Now, how is that possible? That is obviously not possible. So, I'll give you a simple example. Okay. Now, just listen to me. Don't type anything for 2 minutes. Listen to me and you'll understand what I'm trying to tell you. Let's assume this. You are at a certain hotel, okay? And you have to stay a night in the certain hotel. Now, in that hotel, there are 10 rooms, okay? There are 10 rooms. And the hotel staff tells you there is no water in any room, okay? There is no water in any room. Now, the hotel staff basically gives you 10 liters of water. You are given 10 liters of water and you are told, sir, you can distribute this water in the 10 rooms in the way that you like. You are free. You can either give all 10 liter to one room, you can divide this, give some water to some room, you can give no water to some room. It depends upon you. The only condition, the only condition is, we will tell you which is your room only after you divide the water. Understood? The only condition is we will tell you which one is your room only after you divide the water, not before that. Now, in this scenario, how will you divide the water? You tell me. In this scenario, how will you divide the water? You don't know which room is yours. You will be given one of the rooms to stay. No water is available in any room right now. You are free to decide how to divide the water. No one is interfering. Now, how will you divide? As I can see, everyone is at the same answer. Everyone is saying, what will you do? You will provide 1 liter to every room, right? So, what did you do? You made the best possible law. How? Because you did not know anything about yourself. The moment someone would have told you that you will be staying in this room, you would have obviously given more water to this room. Even knowingly, unknowingly, you would have done this. That is called the Rawls theory of justice. Okay, that is called the Rawls theory of justice. So basically, this is the concept that the government has to ensure that they provide equally. Now, your version of equality will be very different as compared to others, but that is how the government usually work. That is how the laws usually work. Anyways, so what I'm trying to tell you is, whenever you have to write your thoughts about any topic which has diverse views, make sure you write from a neutral point of view. Don't think about where you stand. You may stand in a community which has reservation benefits. Even then, you should have points against reservation also. Even if you stand in the community that does not get reservation, even then you should have certain points in favor of reservation also. Only then you have a complete answer. Okay, let's go ahead then. The next topic that we have here is caste based discrimination in Indian prison. So, what happened here? Basically, a PIL was filed in the Supreme Court recently. A petition was filed in which the petitioner said that even in the prisons across the country, there is caste based discrimination. How? See, the prisoners that are in the prison, they are given certain duties. They have to run their own prison. No one from outside comes to cook the food. No one from outside will come to clean the prison. Everything has to be done by the prisoners themselves. So workload is divided basically. Some prisoners are allotted to, let's say, cooking, so they will cook. Some will be appointed to agriculture if there is any plantation going on. Some will be appointed to sanitation, cleaning of toilets. Some will be appointed to cleaning of rooms, etc. So basically, the work is divided. Now, the petitioner has said, if you look at multiple states in India which have their own rule book. So remember, prison is a state subject. First, remember this: prison is a state subject. So every state has a different rule. In Uttar Pradesh, you can have a very different rule in the prison as compared to Karnataka. West Bengal will have a very different rule in prison as compared to Gujarat or Rajasthan, etc. So, petitioner says that in a lot of states, the prison rule book, the prison manuals specifically tell that people belonging to this caste can only work in cooking. People belonging to this caste can only work for cleaning toilets. So, this is open discrimination on the basis of caste, something that has been prohibited in the constitution, something that has been or that was at the center of this entire freedom struggle in India and the movement after that, but it still continues in our prison. The PIL says in Madhya Pradesh, Delhi, Tamil Nadu, etc., their prison rule book says specific lower caste only will be assigned menial job like sweeping and cleaning toilets. Specific caste only will be allowed to touch and prepare food. All that is something that existed in India many, many years back. We don't have this in our open society now, but in prisons, these problems still exist. The reason is, see, as a society, when someone goes to the prison, you and me, we don't think about it. For example, if I ask you right now, make a list of 20 biggest problems that India faces, or make a list of 20 biggest issues that we have in our society, none of you will write prison reforms, because our logic will be first improve the life of people outside the prison, right? We'll write poverty, environment, education, health, whatever, but we will not write prison reform, because our logic is whoever has gone to prison, to hell with them. right? They are prisoners. We won't think about them. So society usually does not really think about the condition inside the prison, unless you see a movie on that and you become very emotional. But usually you will not talk about what is happening within the prison. This is where the problem starts. For example, if you look at Rajasthan prison rule, Rajasthan prison rule specifically says assignment of Mehta. Mehta is a caste considered as lower caste in the state. They will only be assigned to latrines, while Brahmins will be given job within the kitchen. Similarly, we have Tamil Nadu jail manual doing the same kind of thing. West Bengal also specifically identifying what caste of prisoners will be restricted to sweeping and cleaning of toilets and doing nothing else, while the upper caste will be asked to work in the kitchen. Only they will be allowed to touch the food while being prepared. All these become problematic. Now, it's not that we don't have laws against it, but as you all know, implementing the laws in open society is difficult. Implementing law within the prison is even a step more difficult. You have seen so many cases of gangsters inside the Tihar jail conducting their gang wars. We have seen so many news that a gangster within the Tihar jail taking responsibility of a murder that happens outside. So we all know what kind of logic or what kind of law and order is maintained within the prison. In 2003, prison guidelines were reformed by the government that talked about having better security, discipline within the prison. Nothing really worked out after that. It's a violation of fundamental rights when you discriminate on the basis of caste. In fact, the Supreme Court also in 1978 specifically said even if someone goes to prison, that does not mean their fundamental rights can be violated. Even if you are within the prison, even if you are undergoing a sentence, you still have the right to have your own fundamental rights. So you can't just take away fundamental rights on the logic that someone is in the prison. There has been a lot of demand for prison reforms in India, but they have not been done so far. What does the central government say? The central government says it's a state subject. What can we do? The central government says that you have to ask the states why are they not reforming the prisons. We can't do this at the national level. Caste-based discrimination within the prison is a problem that exists across the entire country. It is just a few examples that we have taken, that some jail manuals talk about caste-based reservation, but in fact it is almost every single state. Supreme Court has given a 4 week time for the states to respond about what are the changes that they are now trying to make. Now, what has the government of India done? The government of India last year, you would have remembered also, we discussed this one in one of the earlier CNAs. The government of India introduced something called Model Prison Act 2023. Now, the problem with this is, as I said, prisons is a state subject. So, central government cannot officially make a law on prison or how to run the prison. So, what was this all about? This law was basically first for the union territories, and second, it was a kind of a advice to the states that you can also make these changes. So it was first specifically applicable to the union territories, and secondly, it was specifically done so that the states can actually make sure that they reform their laws according to this model act. States cannot be forced to do that, it's their subject at the end of the day. But the government of India said that we have made certain changes in this. Mainly, the new law talks about reforms inside the prison, making sure that the prisoners are ready to have a new life after they come out, rather than punishing them, reform them, make them ready for better job opportunities when they come out. This is what the pointers were in the Model Prison Act. These prison manuals are different from state to state. These prison manuals, again, as I said, are very old in many cases, as we saw in case of Rajasthan 1951 prison manual, and they have not been reformed because the idea is there is no incentive for the government to reform this. Just try and imagine this. When someone comes to your house and asks, vote for me in the next election, I want to become your MLA. Do you tell the person, change the prison, only then I will vote for you? Improve the life of the prisoner, only then I'll vote for you? Would you ever say that? No, you will not say that. The maximum you will say is, give me free electricity, I'll vote for you. Give me free water, I'll vote for you. You don't say improve prison, have prison reforms, only then I'll vote for you. So the idea is there is no incentive for the government to bring any change. And in the absence of any incentive, you can't really expect the government to think a lot on these lines. And that is a problem that we have even today. Now, in 2013, we passed the prohibition of manual scavenging in India. As you know, manual scavenging has always been a big problem in India. We have prohibited it as per the law. Even then, in society, it exists in large number. Even within the prison, it still exists. For those who don't know what is manual scavenging, basically the idea is a lot of toilets do not have any water supply. So what happens is someone has to come and clean that human excreta by hand. That is called manual scavenging. The problem is for many decades, this job was only done by people belonging to certain community, to the Dalit community in most cases. They were the ones who were forced to do this job. The government banned this practice in 2013. Even then, it exists in many rural areas where we still don't have proper water supply in the washrooms. Even in the prisons, this problem still exists. Even in the prisons, we still have this issue where people or where the prisons don't have proper water supply, adequate water supply in the washrooms, and people belonging to a specific caste, specific community are forced to act as cleaners of the toilet, forced to indulge in manual scavenging, even though it has been banned by the government and by the Supreme Court also from time to time. Prison reforms is not just an issue in India. Prison reforms is an issue around the entire world because the thinking and mentality of the people is the same. It's not just in India that we don't care about prison or prisoners. Around the world, it's the same. Why would any common man in their day to day life think about the prisoners? For us, we will be happy that, oh, bad people go to prison, very happy. But we don't think about the reforms in the prison. So, internationally, also, it's a big issue. Internationally, in the UN, the Nelson Mandela rules were adopted in 2015. What is this? So, Nelson Mandela, the famous South African leader, he spent many, many decades in the jail. He talked about the reforms in the jail that should be introduced. So, basically, the guidelines are named after him, called the Nelson Mandela rules. They are the rules of non discriminating against prisoners and ensuring the dignity of the prisoners within the prison. India also said that we are making a model prison manual in 2016 on these lines. But again, these are model manuals, means suggestion to the states. The central government can only make the model law. It is upon the states whether they want to accept this or not. Similar to the Model Prison Act that was passed, it is upon the states whether they want to accept these changes or not. The central government can just suggest, can just hope that these changes are implemented at the state level. This is a kind of practice question from this part specifically. Caste system is assuming new identities and associational reforms. Hence, caste system cannot be eradicated in India. Comment. Before we go to the next one, quickly a few questions. Pallavi saying, does a person in prison not have the right to vote? No, Pallavi, absolutely not. Even if you are in the jail for one day and elections were happening on that day only, you can't vote. The interesting part is you can contest elections from the prison if your jail term is less than 2 years. Within the prison, while staying there, you can contest election. Many politicians do that. They don't even come out. They still win the elections, but you can't vote if you're in the prison. Satyaprasad is saying, what is the significance of central jail as a prison is a state subject? Satyaprasad, there are certain jails in union territories, so they will be central jails basically. Then Kirutika is saying, can the central government force the states to implement some rules of subject which is under the state subject? Kirutika, no, not under normal circumstances. They can force, and if there is national emergency or there is president rule in that state, but under normal circumstances, no. The central government won't be able to force the states to implement certain laws. Darsh is saying there are many examples in front of us wherein children from remotest corners of the country have achieved higher education, even within the existing education system. So, what is actually to be addressed, children or the system? Others both. See, understand. If you know about certain success stories from remotest part of the country, people coming in, getting higher education. Most of you would have seen that movie 12th Fail also. People coming from the remotest part of the country achieving success. It's a great story, great success story. But the problem is, if you are just dependent upon a few success stories and appreciating that, forgetting the fact that there are lakhs and crores of people who could not make it because of lack of opportunities. The government has to address that. So I won't say the problem exists with the students only just because someone made it. Why can't you make it? There are always exceptions in every single field. But again, you can't just go ahead with the exceptions. Sridevi is saying, can the Supreme Court make the order to the state to adopt these prison manual? Supreme Court can do anything. They can order me to stop this class right now if they want to. Supreme Court can do anything under Article 142 of the Indian Constitution. Okay, let's move forward then. The next topic that we have is Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment Year End Review 2023. As I said earlier as well, whenever the year comes to an end, every single ministry of the government of India releases their year end review. It is a kind of a report card that they make themselves. Just imagine if you were allowed to make your own report card in school. Just imagine what a great time that would have been. Writing amazing student, could have done better, obviously, but already got 10 plus 10, 10 out of 10. Parents should give more pocket money. You could have written all those stuff, right? So ministries get that chance. They make their own report card. It's called the year end review. So what they do is they hide all the negative stuff. They don't write anything that is negative. They only write about what are the achievements. So it's a long report that they basically tell. In this article, I'm not going to be discussing all the pointers given by the ministry. It will be a very, very long list. If you want to read all of them, it is given on the PIB. You can read that. What we will be discussing is some of the important highlights of what the ministry achieved in this year. Again, these are important for the mains examination point of view. You can give examples of what the government has achieved in the past year or so in this field. For example, the government has been focusing a lot on the rights of the Divyangjans, that is the disabled, and the transgender community. The government has been trying to include them in as many government programs as possible. The government signed an MOU with South Africa as well for cooperation in the disability sector, making sure that there is exchange of experts, even though they may have some problem in mobility. So people belonging to the disabled community should be allowed to exchange, should be allowed to go to the other country. Their governments also will cooperate here. Apart from this, the government organized a Divya Kala Mela 2023. This again was a government's initiative to give a boost to people suffering from any kind of disability, to help them get better employment opportunities, to help them with skill development. The government also tried to make the public aware about different types of disabilities by celebrating and observing the Disabilities Awareness Day. The government has also been observing the World Braille Day on January 4 and the Disability or Person with Disability Day on December 3rd. Now, a lot of these things again are very routine, something that the government does every year. For example, organizing this kind of a festival, having this kind of a day, it's something that is very annual thing that happens every single year. So it's not really a highlight per se. But again, if you have to write a 500-word answer, you have to write something. So if this ministry also was told by Prime Minister, you have to write a 1,000-word answer about your year-end review. So they'll also write about something that is very routine. So they have written all these things. We celebrated this day, we organized this festival, but it's not any groundbreaking stuff as such. Apart from this, they also awarded certain people, especially from sports and the arts community, who have achieved a lot despite the different disabilities that they suffer from. The government facilitated Olympic winners. For example, the Indian deaf cricket team, the para swimmers, all of them have been facilitated by the government. Did you see the recent Arjuna Award ceremony? Did you see that? The Arjuna Award ceremony. If you have not seen that, do see that. Yeah, I'm not talking about Mohammad Shami. I mean, not Shami. I'm talking. See, that is the problem. The problem is you all remember Mohammad Shami, but you don't remember the athlete that I want to basically take your attention towards. Yes, Rakshit, right? Divya, right? Vikram, right? Who is the girl I want to talk about here, or what? Who is the girl I'm referring to? The girl that won the medal in archery. The girl that won the medal in archery. Remember? The girl from Jammu Kashmir won the archery medal, Sheetal Devi. She was also awarded the Arjuna Award. So again, these are examples that you can quote. These are examples that the government is setting to give inspiration to the others as well. The Shantru, not PV Sindhu, not PV Sindhu, not PV Sindhu. She's not into archery. At least not that I know. She may be an archer, but not that I know. Anyways, the government has also started a lot of other things. The government has released the unique disability ID portal as well for the disabled community to register themselves to get a unique ID to help with training, employment opportunities, etc. Government has also been helping people from the disabled community for entrepreneurship. The government has been providing them skills and access to loan opportunities as well. The government this year also launched the Indian Sign Language Dictionary term. The government launched online courses in the Indian Sign Language as well. Now, this is something where India has been lagging behind. For example, if you look at most of the Western countries, most of the European countries, US, etc., whenever there is an important speech by the president or by the leaders, whenever there's an important speech, there is always a sign language interpreter who will be interpreting that speech for people who can't hear on the screen. In India, we don't really have that. We used to have this in India on Doordarshan earlier, but now we don't really have that in the private channels. We don't have that. So we are basically leaving out a large part of our population that is not able to hear. So that also has to be addressed going forward. The government also set up high-tech sports training center this year. It was set up in Gwalior, named Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee Center, to make sure that those who want to make a career in sports, despite all their issues and despite all their shortcomings, are supported with all this skill. The government also made sure that they gave access to proper finance. Any idea what is NDFDC? Any idea? Let's see who can Google faster. What is NDFDC? Any idea? Not fixed deposit loans. Okay, so I'll tell you. So this is National Divyangjan Finance and Development Corporation. I'll just write this for you. National Divyangjan Finance and Development Corporation. So this is an agency specifically that gives loans to those entrepreneurs who are facing any kind of physical disability. They are given a loan at a much lower rate of interest so that the government can boost their chances of upskilling, their chances of entering into entrepreneurship. That is again something that the government does. Now, you might, if you Google it, for example, please remember, if you Google it, the Google might tell you that are you talking about NHFDC? If you Google this word, Google might ask you, do you want to know this? So basically, earlier the H stood for handicapped. Those who Googled it right now would have seen this. H earlier stood for handicap. So government changed that. So it is the same department, The government changed the name, so this H now is D. That is Divyangjan. So if the Google result tells you NHFDC, it is the same. The name has been changed. Okay, the name has been changed. So do remember that. So they are basically used by the government to give loans at an affordable rate of interest to those entrepreneurs who are trying to make a career out of this. The government has also helped the disabled people with making a lot of different types of grants. These grants have touched upwards of 368 crore already. I've told this to you earlier as well, and I'll repeat this, those who did not listen earlier. So basically, if you see there, if you really want to help in your own personal small capacity, people who are suffering from certain disability, there is an app that you can download called Be My Eyes. I've told this earlier as well, and I'll just tell this again. Download this, Be My Eye. So, what is this? So, basically, it's an app which blind people use on their phone. They can basically push a button, and there will be a video call that will basically come to you or anyone who wants to help. So, when they give you a call, it will be a video call, and they might basically ask you for certain help. So, and it can be, it is very very basic. I'll tell you a personal example. So for example, there was a blind guy who called me a few months back. So what happened was, he needed to tell his Aadhaar card number to someone, and he did not know how to read Aadhaar card number because it was written on the Aadhaar card. So he called me and he showed me the Aadhaar card in front of the camera, and he asked me, "Can you tell me what is my Aadhaar number? Just read it and tell me." So basically, these are small little things that you can do to help them. So it's not government related; it's a private NGO that runs this particular app. So you can do that as well. So basically, Pulkit is saying, how did they dial the number? So Pulkit, they don't dial a number. Just like in your phone, if you have to, let's say, put your phone on silent, there's a button. Similarly, there's just a small button which you press, and that app will automatically dial someone's number who has registered that app to help. There are thousands of people who registered that app. Someone randomly will get the call. That is how it usually works. I, in fact, I, I'll tell you something. I got a very interesting call once. I got a call from a mother who was blind. She was sitting with her daughter, helping her with the school homework. So what happened was, the mother had told the kid that write A B C D up to K. So basically, the kid wrote it, and now the mother can't check it. How will the mother check? So the mother called me up, and so she basically showed me that notebook, and she asked me, "Can you please check, has she written the right alphabets or not, in the correct order or not?" So these are very small little things that we take for granted, because you only know about these issues when you have a problem. Just imagine, you close your eyes and now imagine your life for 5 minutes. Can you even get up to use the washroom? Can you get up even to go to the kitchen to have something? It will be very very difficult. So again, it's extremely difficult to get there. Anyways, let's have this question. It was asked by UPSC in 2011. Let's see if we can answer this. Read this carefully. Time starts now. Anshika, the name of the app is this. Be My Eyes. This is the name of the app. Sham, the outcomes that we discussed, the achievement that we discussed, you can remember that much. 37% people got this right. All of these are actually true. All of these are true. So these are all the rights, benefits available to persons suffering with disability in India. For them, the right to education extends till 18 years of age and not 14. They also get preferential land allotment for setting up businesses from the government, and the public buildings, that is the buildings that are owned by the government, are supposed to have ramps and not just stairs. Although in reality, Not all the public buildings adhere to this, but at least on paper or as per the law, they are supposed to have ramps on the buildings. Okay, before we move forward, let's take up a few questions very quickly. Chandrajyoti Singh, I have stammering. Why is this not considered as a disability? Chandrajyoti, I don't know. Maybe the government doesn't feel that it impacts the working of someone's as much as some other disabilities do. Maybe if you make a case for yourself, the government may include that the list gets expanded every few years. Deepika Singh, was the year 2023 focusing more on the upliftment of disabled only? No, Deepika, we discussed a year-end review of this specific ministry. So this ministry's work, the empowerment ministry's work, is with disabled people mostly. So that is why the findings are about this. If you read about the year-end review of Ministry of Education, then it will be different findings. Devyani Singh, why is it more oriented to disabled? Devyani, as I said, and I'll repeat that again, the year-end review is of specific ministry, social justice and empowerment ministry. So their work is mostly related to disabled people only. That is why these are the pointers. If you discuss or if we read about the year-end review of other ministries, they would have different pointers. Um, Lakshmi saying Divya Kala Mela not understood, you or not understood. Lakshmi, Divya Kala Mela is where the government basically tried to encourage and give more skills to people suffering from certain disabilities so that they can sell their products and they can market themselves. Manu is saying, sorry, no. Kriti is saying why Child Marriage Act to women age for 21 has not been passed. Kriti, a lot of bills take some time to pass. It was introduced, it was not passed. Maybe it will be passed in some later sessions. It was not passed because there was a need felt to have more debate, a wider debate on this. Yes, Simran, PIL stands for Public Interest Litigation. Okay. The next topic that we have is housing for particularly vulnerable tribal groups. I'll just write this for you first. Particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So basically, within the tribal community in India, the government knows that within the tribal community also there are some tribal communities that are particularly vulnerable, that are much more backward because of their low education, because of the primitive tactics that they use in their agriculture, because of their lack of education. They require much more assistance from the government. So government recently said that they are focusing to fast track housing for particularly vulnerable tribal groups specifically. The government says that by mid of Jan, we will be giving it a push. We will be ensuring that the money from the center government goes out to the particularly vulnerable tribal groups to have housing for them specifically. Now, as you know, providing housing to the poor people, especially in the rural areas, has been one of the topmost priorities of the government. For that, they have a program called Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin. This is a scheme specifically to allow them to build housing in the rural areas. Under this scheme only, the particularly vulnerable tribal groups will be given the housing at an affordable price. The government transfers funds. It's not a lot of money. It's a 60-40 division. 60% comes in from the central government, 40% comes in from the state government. In northeastern states and hilly states, it is 90-10. 90% comes in from the central government, 10% comes in from the state government. In India, there are total of 75 particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So these are those tribal communities which are even more backward within the tribal community. That is why they are called particularly vulnerable tribal community. Under this, the government plans to build 4.9 lakh houses. This is a part of a larger program called Pradhan Mantri Janjati Adivasi Nyay Mahabhiyan. Please understand this. The government started an initiative called PN Janman, Pradhan Mantri Janjati Adivasi Nyay Mahabhiyan. Means under this abhiyan or under this program, the government intends to improve the quality of life for the tribals. It has a lot of components. Housing is just one of them. I'll just show you all the different components. Here you see. So under this initiative, government wants to provide all of them with a pakka ghar, means a proper well built house. Government wants to ensure there is water supply. The government wants to ensure all weather road connectivity, 24/7 electricity, hostel, skill development, mobile medical unit, having access to healthcare, nutrition, employment, and mobile network. The government wants to ensure that all these facilities are provided to the Adivasis, that is, the tribal community living across the country, especially the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. There are a total of 75 communities spread across the entire country. Out of all of these 75, Odisha is the state where you see most of the tribal community living in India. This initiative was announced by the Prime Minister in November itself, on the 15th of November. Again, the government wants to ensure that the quality of life being lived by the tribal community, especially the particularly vulnerable tribal community, should improve further. It's a part of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Grameen. It was launched in 2016, where central and the state governments would come together to give financial assistance for building of houses. Under this, people belonging to scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, particularly vulnerable tribal groups, freed bonded labor, means the laborers who were bonded earlier were freed now, and widows, widows of the defense personnel that were killed, ex-servicemen, all of these are covered under this scheme. Under this scheme, all these living in the rural areas will be covered, where the government wants to provide proper housing. The deadline for completing 2.95 crore housing is 31st of March 2024. Usually, these kind of deadlines are not met. Only when the date approaches, we'll see whether the government is able to complete this. Most probably government will have to extend the deadline, giving different reasons, corona, etc. But at least for now, the deadline is 31st of March 2024, where the government plans to build 2.95 crore houses in total. As I said, the division is 60-40. In the plain area, 60% money given from the central government, 40% from the state government. Again, it's not a very large amount of money. For example, if you are living in a urban area in any city in the country and you are given this much money, you will not be able to build a house, trust me. How much money is given? 2 lakh rupees. 2 lakh rupees is given to the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Other people in this scheme are only given 1.2 lakh rupees to build a house in the plain area and 1.3 lakh rupees in the hilly areas. Ask your friends who are living in cities, their home interior work, only the home interior building of almiras, etc., will cost more than this. So again, there is a mismatch. Obviously, these are the rates that have been decided by the government for ultra poor rural areas only. But again, if you ask people living in bigger cities, someone living in a 2 BHK, 3 BHK, the cost of their interior, only interior work doesn't even include paint and all. It means just building wardrobe, having a basically wallpaper, etc., building kitchen set, etc. That alone will cost much more than this. Apart from this, the government will also give additional 12,500 rupees for building of toilets, and the government will allow 90 days of Manrega work as well that will be paid. So in total, the government will be helping them with 2.39 lakh rupees. 2 lakhs specifically for the house, 12,500 specifically for the toilets separately, and then under Manrega you'll also be paid wages. Total it will be 2.39 lakhs. Aditya saying Italian tiles. Aditya, not in Italian tiles, man. Indian tiles, JK tiles, देश की मिट्टी से बनी. Even those will also cost you a lot of money. Not just Italian tiles, trust me. Vivek, 12,500 is not for toilet papers, it's for toilet construction. I'm not sure where you read papers. It's for if you're using that much money to buy toilet papers, there's something wrong. Should not do that. But 22,500 for toilet construction and not toilet paper. Okay, Vivek? Got it? So the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, there are 75 of them across the entire country right now. Most of them are in Odisha. How do you categorize them? Many people have asked this as well. How do you categorize them? Basically, their agriculture techniques are primitive. So the agriculture techniques that they don't use any new techniques. They use very primitive techniques. They are reducing population, low education level, poverty, and lesser development as compared to nearby areas. Lesser development if you compare the nearby areas. All of that is taken into consideration to decide who will be amongst a particularly vulnerable tribal group. So again, they are divided on a state to state basis. This is the complete list. You can get the complete list online as well wherever you search. These are the states that have wide variety or that have a large population of the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Most of them, as you can see here, live in Odisha. On that note, let's see if we can answer this question of 2019. Read it carefully. Your time starts now. 65% people got this right. I thought it's a pretty easy question to answer. Even if you did not know the fourth statement, that does not matter. You could very easily just eliminate. Just eliminate the third one. I've told you time and time again, there are 75 and not 95 groups. If you could have just read this one, you could have eliminated. The only option that does not have three is C. Except C option, all of them have three. That is why the answer here is C. First correct, second correct, third wrong, fourth is correct. Irregular and the Kondar AD tribes, both of these are in this list. If you look at this list, if you can see here, these tribes, look at Tamil Nadu. So Tamil Nadu basically has the Irregular tribe, and Kondar AD belong to Andhra Pradesh. Now, the problem with this kind of question is no one can ask you or suggest you to remember all 75 tribes. It is just not humanly possible. So, when UPSC gives this question to you, they are not expecting that you should know all of these. You should not know all of these. They are also expecting that you will be able to eliminate very easily. If elimination was not possible, then it would have been a very difficult question to answer. But with these options, it's a very simple question to answer. So UPSC does not want you to remember all the 75 names. They make a question in such a manner itself that you do not have to remember all the names. You don't even have to look at this particular statement. Even then, you can answer this very, very, very easily. So Rashi, no, you don't need to learn the name of all the tribes. Okay, a few questions quickly. Um, Pulkit is saying as increased number of criminals are getting elected to mainstream politics, there must be some incentive for government to go for prison reforms. No comments, Pulkit. I don't want to increase the prison population by being the one in prisons. Okay. So Akash is saying there is no incentive for the government to bring prison reforms. Can judiciary intervene and ask the government to consider it? Akash, see, can judiciary intervene if this much is the question? Yes, they can. Obviously, they can. Will they intervene? I don't know. When they will intervene? I don't know. So if the question is, can they intervene? Yes. When, how, why are they not? None of the answers are with me right now. Then, Akash is saying, since the Shrey scheme will help bringing ST students at par with others, can such scheme be the way forward for removing reservation gradually? Akash, yes, can be the way forward, but again, introducing a scheme for a specific number of students and covering the entire population will take a long time. Yes, if the scheme goes well and if it does have an impact, why not? Lakshmi is saying why the amount given by the government for house is different in plain and hilly areas. Any important reason? Lakshmi, yes. The reason is in the hilly areas, construction is always more difficult. It's in hilly areas you'll always see things being slightly more costly. For example, in the plain areas, transportation is easier. You can easily build construction material. Hilly areas, it's difficult. You need more resources. Simple. Then. Deepika is saying, can if they are PVTG, then they might be living in scheduled areas with difficult terrain. Deepika, no, that's an assumption that you are making. Not all the particularly vulnerable tribal groups would live in these areas. Most of them would, but not to say that all of them would live in these areas. Okay. Second last topic that we have here is about the Suvidha sanitary napkins under the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Pariyojana. So basically, this is not something new. It's just a statement given by the government. The government has reminded once again that sanitary napkins at a rate of just rupee 1 per napkin is available at Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Program Kendra, and people can go and buy from there. So those who don't know the concept, let me first explain. The government of India under this scheme, under the Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana, has set up certain medical stores in simple words. At these medical stores, you can get generic medicines at a very, very low cost. So, for example, if you buy a paracetamol tablet at the usual general medical store, you might have to give 30, 40, 50 rupees for a strip. At these stores, you can get the same paracetamol at rupees 1 per tablet and even lower than that. So these are generic medicines that are sold at these kendra. The government is reminding that at these kendras you can also buy sanitary napkins at rupees 1 per napkin. So the people should take advantage of this. Again, this is not something new. Crores of them have already been sold. Government says that 47.87 crore pads have already been sold from these Jan Aushadhi Kendra. All these are good quality, oxy biodegradable. The government is just reminding once again that these are available at these shops and they can be bought at an affordable price. It will help in enhancing women's health and accessibility to these menstrual hygiene. I would urge you in your city as well. There would be a lot of these Jan Aushadhi Kendra. Explore these shops. You can get medicines, generic medicines at a much, much, much lower price. They help with affordability and by maintaining the quality as well. It's not that the government is compromising with the quality in these cases. Now, usually the problem why people or medical stores don't sell these medicines, the generic medicines, is because there is not a lot of margin. See, as a person, if I want to open up a medical store, I will open up a medical store to sell medicine at a high price, right? So that I can make a good profit. So government has to encourage people to open up these Jan Aushadhi Kendra. How does the government do that? Government has promised certain profits to them. The government has promised 20% of the MRP as the profit, that you will get at least 20% of the profit. So don't worry, government will ensure that you don't have zero profit. Also, even 20% of MRP is not that great. Again, the reason is that if the MRP itself is, let's say, rupees 10, to 20% of that is only rupees 2. So a lot of people who were initially thinking of starting these Janaushadhi Kendra are not that interested in this, because again, you have to operate that shop, there's a lot of expenditure, and there is not much incentive, or there's not much hope, or there's not much profit that is coming into with these transactions. Some people in the chat are telling me the quality of the products, the pads, etc., is are poor. Again, this is an issue that is seen with almost all of these government programs. And I'll give you a personal example myself. So if you go to government schools, and I'm not talking about sanitary pads or anything, let's talk about midday meals. If you look at the law under which midday meal program is run, in that law, the government specifically has said that a midday meal should have this much gram of protein, this much gram of carbohydrate, this much gram of fat, this much gram of micronutrient should be present. And trust me, if you see that food, there is no protein, absolutely no protein in that food. I've seen that personally for a long, long time. And again, that is because on paper, the government laws can be very different. And when they're implemented on the ground, it becomes a problem. And it also changes from area to area. So again, I am no one to say that no, 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 all the products, sanitary pads, etc., are top quality. Yes, I completely agree. If you say they are not top quality, your experience might be that. But yes, this is something that is always seen when you talk about the government projects, because when the government subsidizes all these things, there are always people in between that will have to cut down on the quality, and that is seen in these cases as well. The government is promising 20% margin. Apart from that, the government is also giving them incentives of 2.5 to 5 lakh rupees at oh sorry, the government has also been offering them incentives up to a limit of 15,000 rupees per month if they are able to sell up to 5 lakh rupees of products. The government will also give them 2 lakh rupees of grant so that they have enough money to stock up all the products and they are able to sell off. Because the problem is, when you buy or when you rent out these shops, renting out the shop, real estate, etc., it's expensive. The only reason why you would want to set up a medical store is to sell at a very high margin. But these generic products, the reason why they're not sold openly is because there's not enough margin available. And the same is a problem seen here as well. I'll give you one more example. If some of you, and I'm sure many of you here, would like Patanjali products, again, I am not endorsing them, I just give an example. In many of your houses, you will see Patanjali products being used. Maybe some of your parents are followers of Patanjali, so they want Patanjali products being used. You will see that increasingly you will not find a lot of shops keeping Patanjali products. And when you ask them, why are you not keeping them? They will say margin is very low. They will say we don't get enough margin. So you can't blame them as well. For the shopkeeper or anyone who wants to sell these products, they are selling it to earn a profit. And this is where it becomes a problem here. So for these kind of schemes also, to get wide coverage, the government has to ensure there is enough earning potential in the middle. The quality of medicine, at least what the government claims, is only those medicines are sold at these shops which are WHO good manufacturing practices certified. The government also does a lab testing of all these products through NABL. Then only then these medicines are brought to the counter to be sold. The government claims that these medicines are at least 50 to 90% cheaper than the branded products out there in the market, and that is why the government wants everyone to be able to afford that coming forward. This is a practice question about this topic. So rather than taking your questions right now, let's go ahead, complete the last topic, and then whoever wants to leave can leave. Whoever wants to ask any remaining question, you can ask that. But let's complete the last topic also while we are at it. The last topic that we have is recent report by NCRB, the National Crime Record Bureau. So they have a very depressing job. Their job is to keep a track of all the crimes happening in India. So they keep on basically keeping a track how many crimes have happened, which category of crimes do we have to put in. So they have given numbers of 2022. What are some of the highlights? Some of the highlights as expected. For example, crime against SC/ST unfortunately still exists in the country. Cyber crimes are increasing as we undertake more and more technology, cyber crimes obviously will increase. Overall, the crime rate has declined. Now, when you say crime rate has declined, there are two ways to look at it. One way is to be very happy, crime has declined, congratulations. Second way to look at it is, as per this report, they only count those crimes that have been reported. If you don't report a crime, that's not a crime. So maybe the real crimes have reduced or just the reporting has reduced. For example, if there is a theft at your house, again, I am not saying there is, let's assume there's a theft at someone's house. Only when they report it to the police, it will be counted by the NCRB. If you don't report it, it's not counted. So when you say crime has reduced, not necessarily it has reduced, it may just mean that the reporting of the crime has reduced. The report also talks about which city has the least number of crime, least number of cases, which is the safest big city, that is Kolkata. Kolkata has been the city with the least number of cognizable offences per lakh. Pune, Hyderabad are at second and third places when it comes to the safest cities. As expected, the number of cyber crimes have increased as more and more people use online technology, as more and more people use social media. There are a lot of scams these days. You would have also gotten a message on WhatsApp, right? Sir, you can earn 150 rupees per day or per task. You only have to give 5-star rating or review. All of you got that message, right? You got that message, right? Yeah, I also got that message. I earn 150 rupees and then I blocked them. So I have been earning 150 rupees very happily and then I blocked them. So basically, you should not do that. It's not advisable. It is dangerous. But as you can see, more and more people are opting for all these things because again, everyone wants to become rich quickly, and these cyber crimes, cyber attacks, etc., become a very big problem, and lot of educated people are falling for it. There was a news, an engineer of Infosys was duped of 3 crore rupees by these fraudsters. And I'm thinking, Infosys engineer, 3 crore in bank account? I was not thinking that highly of Infosys, but anyways, so there are people who are falling for it even though they are pretty educated. It's not about uneducated people anymore. We have also seen a number of suicides increasing. Number of suicides usually increase whenever you have a bad year in terms of economic growth, COVID-19, etc. The reasons for suicide, as quoted by this report, are family problems, marriage related problems, bankruptcy, etc. Apart from this, crime against foreigners has also increased. Crime against foreigners are mainly crimes against tourists. When the tourists come in, people who interact with them want to take money from them, want to basically have some fraud. All these highlights have been written in this report. The report also talks about high charge sheeting rates. Charge sheet means when a case is filed, when a complaint is filed to the police has to then prepare an entire report about evidences that they have collected, then submit it to the court. This is called charge sheet. Number of charge sheets that have been filed have also increased. That indicate that the police is doing their job in a better manner. The lesser the charge sheets filed means the police is not doing their job properly. A lot of times people just remain in the prison for many months just because charge sheet has not been filed. So more charge sheet being filed is always a positive sign going forward. This is a practice question from this part, as you can see here, about cyber crimes and the measures that have been taken. This brings us to the end of today's webinar. I hope you learned a lot of new things about crime, caste based discrimination, and a lot of stuff that you needed to know. Okay. There's a question from Syam, cognizable and non cognizable offenses. So basically, cognizable offenses are serious offenses. Cognizable offenses like murder, etc., where police does not need a warrant to arrest you. It's, for example, if you have committed a murder, police is standing there and the police comes to arrest you, you can't say, oh, first bring the warrant and then I will come. You committed the murder right there. So they don't have to have a warrant for that. Cognizable are serious offenses. Then, okay, I'll take some questions quickly. Sneha is saying, is there any difference in the quality of medicines available in Jan Aushadhi Kendra lower price than the market price? No. Sneha, what happens is the market price, the market medicines are branded. For example, when you go to the market and buy, let's say Dolo, 650, it's a brand name. What it has is paracetamol. If you go to the generic medicine store, they will just give you paracetamol without any brand name. That is where the cost difference comes in. It is the same stuff made by the same ingredients. So that is the only difference. Dhwani Singh, in one webinar, you told about government schemes, table on government scheme. Can you repeat that? Dhwani, I said that when you read about the government scheme, make a table of certain things for any government scheme. For example, which ministry is running the scheme, number one, what is the target, what are they trying to achieve, what is the target audience, means who are they impacting rural area, urban area, women, minority, what is the scheme all about, and write about basically what is the budget. That's it. Just make a table of these 4 or 5 things about every government scheme and it will be good to go. Then Aishni wants the leaderboard. Okay, here is the here's the leaderboard. There are only 3 questions. A lot of toppers today, so you can check out their names. Devyani saying, do women in security play a role in child marriage? Devyani, I don't think so. I don't think women have a role to play in child marriage. I don't think that the women or the girls' wish is ours at the time of child marriage. So I won't say that they have a role or their insecurity has a role in child marriage. Alok is saying the logic behind suicide being reported by NCRB. Alok, there's no logic behind their reporting. They're just stating a fact that these many suicides have come in. Having suicides in a society is never a good sign. It's a sign that the society is not able to fulfill the aspirations of people. Shrutima is saying in warm weather, Pakka house is not conducive, particularly in summer. Why only Pakka house? No, Smriti, my Pakka house basically means a house that does not fall down just because it rained. That's what meant by Pakka house. There are mud houses, they will fall if there is heavy rain. So when you say Pakka house, that means those concrete, basically concrete built houses that are not affected by just rain or hail, etc. That's what they mean. Deepika saying it's mentioned only after passing the quality test, medicines are dispatched to these kendra. How is it? How is the quality reduced after reaching the kendra? Deepika, I am not saying the quality reduces. Some people in the chat said that they used the pads and they were not up to the mark. That is what they said. Also, please understand this. If let's say 1 lakh medicines are being sold, okay, it's not that all those 1 lakh tablets are tested. There is random testing that happens. Let's say 1 lakh tablets are sold. Out of these 10, 50, 100 will be picked up, sold, tested in the lab. If it is all fine, then they assume everything is fine. For example, if I buy a Honda City, you buy a Honda City, 10 lakh people buy a Honda City. Mine is working fine. But there may be some people who would say Honda City is a bad car because my car was faulty. So there are always cases like these. Okay. So these were the questions that were mainly given to me. We'll end this webinar now. I hope you learned a lot of new things today. Again, reminding you, don't miss out on the test. Give a lot of tests. Make sure that you are on track with the scores. Even if you're scoring low, don't miss out on the test. It will only help you later on. Thank you so much for joining in. We will now see each other very soon in the next webinar. Bye bye. Have a good day ahead. Jai Hind.